with an opening prayer by Reverend Beverly Hoyt, our Mothers Union chaplain. Reverend Hoyt.
Muted.
A pleasant good afternoon to all. It is good when we can gather for something good. I invite you at this time to join me as we come before God in prayer. Let us pray. Father in heaven, we give you all the praise and thanks this afternoon. We thank you, O God, especially for this event and the opportunity to share. We thank you, O God, for your purpose for it. You know, Lord, that when we as women and men gather together, you always have a divine agenda. Our prayer this afternoon is that your will be done through this webinar. Father, take what we are about to offer and multiply our efforts as only you can. I ask you, O God, to steer our intentions to align with your righteous will. And remind us, O Lord, of your faithful provision when our efforts would fail us or fall short. O God, we give you all the glory as we continue to climb over benchmarks after benchmarks, seeking to fulfill your will. I ask, O God, that you would touch the panel this afternoon. That, O God, open our hearts and our minds that we are able to receive as we move forward, O God, to do your mission. In Jesus' name we pray with thanksgiving. And the people say, Amen and amen.
It is my pleasure to welcome all dignitaries, members of the clergy, presidents and other officers, our members, our friends, both local and international, to this special event. It is part of our 100th anniversary celebrations. This event is the last in the introductory segment of our celebrations, as we had to curb and restrict our plans due to the present pandemic. A special welcome to our presenters, 3 of whom are Mothers Union members working in different areas of influence in this worldwide organization, and a special friend of the Mothers Union. Thank you for taking the time to join us, and I hope that you will leave with increased motivation to continue to make your contribution to the mission of the Mothers Union in this diocese, and by extension, worldwide. Welcome. It is also my pleasure now to introduce the moderator for the afternoon. And this person is no one else but Mrs. Margaret Weston, the Diocesan Vice President of Trinidad and Tobago. Margaret Weston is a management systems consultant for the past 20 years, managing director of Delphi Consultants Limited, a company dedicated to assisting manufacturing and service companies in Trinidad and Tobago and the region to improve their management systems and to increase their marketability. She's also a registered systems auditor and trainer. Margaret is a member of St. Thomas Mothers Union and a member of the Diocesan Executive and Council. where she serves as a part of the public relations team for the past 6 years and was recently elected to the post of Vice President. Over to you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you very much, Madam President, distinguished guests. And while I'm doing the introduction, I will please remind, I didn't think I had to remind all persons to mute their systems, please. We're still getting a lot of feedback as people join.
You're muted, Margaret.
Okay. Which part? Did you hear the part about muting? Yeah, so we're reminding all persons to observe the protocol of the Zoom by muting your systems, please. So we welcome all our distinguished guests, members of the panel, friends, and invited persons who are friends of the Mothers Union. It is a pleasure for us to invite you and to encourage you to stay with us as we bring some closure to this very exciting week of our 100th anniversary. This is the last of the formal programs, and we are hoping that it will be just as exciting as the ones that have gone before. So we know very well that the world is changing before our very eyes. We have suddenly found ourselves in each other's living rooms, closer than we have ever been before, getting on with the business of our lives, meetings, celebrations, prayers, being involved in Bible study, joining our friends and families as we celebrate the passing of our loved ones who have passed on due to COVID and of other causes. So change is inevitable. And the only thing permanent, it is said, is change. So as our environment continues to change, we have got to change to continue to remain relevant. And the Mothers Union is no exception, as we continue to keep the aims and objects set out by our founder 145 years ago, Mary Sumner. We still need to take care of families and help them to bring up their children in the love and fear of the Lord. And so we are here today to benefit from the perspectives that will be set forth by our presenters, who will outline for us a snapshot of this continuously changing world and the strategies to make our responses as effective as they can be. So just sit back and enjoy what they have to offer. So we have 4 presenters, and the method that we're going to use this afternoon, we're going to ask each of them to speak for just about 15 minutes. And I will ask you to either take a note of your questions, pencil and paper if you prefer, or use the chat in the Zoom, depending on how technological you are, and put your questions down. Identify, of course, the person to whom the question is going to relate, because we will take questions at the end of the 4 presentations. So you have to take your notes, okay? So we don't want you to forget what you wanted to ask the first speaker and so on. So please take note as you go along, anything that you would want to ask clarification or any questions, and we will use them accordingly. Right, so let's just get on with the presentations. The first speaker is an avid member of the Mothers Union, joining the movement over 33 years ago as a young wife and mother with 3 small sons. She has taken on leadership roles in her branch, her diocese, and her province over the many years. She has been active in the Worldwide Mothers Union parenting program as a facilitator, trainer, and currently in her role as regional trainer for Zone B, working alongside Lena Edmondson of Guyana. She was a member of the Worldwide Fundraising and Communications Committee, which produced the Dear Lord Prayer Book, a compilation of prayers written by Mothers Union members from around the world. She also was a representative member on Worldwide Council for 3 years. She was elected 3 years ago as a worldwide trustee for Zone B. And that Zone B, of course, includes the West Indies, South America, Brazil, USA, and Canada. Quite a large, wide landmass. She's a retired parish nurse in her home church of Christ Church Cathedral in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. She works part-time for the congregation, walking alongside them and supporting parishioners to maintain a healthy body, mind, and spirit. She continues to lead a women's home Bible study for the last 12 years. She is currently supporting and caring for her elderly mother and enjoying a new grandson. And she told us he's coming in 2 weeks, so you could imagine the excitement. She is married to Tim and has 3 grown sons. She has a passion for her faith, for the Mothers Union, and for serving others, and she loves to run. Let us welcome, I'm sure, it's a pity we can't do it with a lusty round of applause, but let us welcome to the microphone, Mrs. Kathleen Snow of Zone E. Kathleen?
Thank you, Sister Margaret, for your warm greetings. And I'm thrilled to be here again. I was with many of you last week at the Thanksgiving service, and it's just wonderful to be here and see so many familiar faces from all across our zone, from Canada, from USA, from the West Indies. So I'm very grateful, and from sisters and brothers in the UK. It's just wonderful to be here. Now, I did have a presentation that I had put on PowerPoint. I'm not sure if that can be posted on there and I'll speak to it, or if not, I will just speak to it myself without the presentation.
If we can put you as a co-host, then you can share the screen and present it, Valerie.
Okay.
No, Daniel is going to put it on. The technician is going to put it on.
Okay.
And even though anyone can get on the screen their PowerPoints without having to access, it's free.
Oops. It was there.
According to the TV personalities, 1 minute, please.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you so much again for inviting me to be part of this special celebration and to share Mothers Union in a changing world as it relates globally to the Worldwide Mothers Union. And I couldn't help but put your flyer up there on that cover page to show that here we are doing a webinar coming from all different countries, all different provinces, connecting for 2.5 hours to share what we love about Mothers Union and where we're going, either at the diocesan level, the provincial level, or the worldwide level. You know, what a changed world, as Sister Margaret mentioned, that we live in now.
Hi, all right, okay.
Who would have thought that we would be living and meeting and working in this way? Next slide, please. So I bring you greetings my joy and pleasure to bring you greetings. And before I do, I want to thank our Provincial President Herman Price and our Diocesan President Bernice Felix for your leadership in Mothers Union in this time and in this place. And I thank Sister Valerie, past DP, for inviting me to this webinar. Next slide, please. So have we changed? When you think about it, certainly we are in a different place in this last year and a half. We are wearing masks and doing physical distancing. We've been in lockdown. We're using this platform of Zoom for meetings, for webinars, and for worship, Bible studies. And there's talk, and people are getting their first vaccination and their second vaccinations. We certainly have changed. In terms of the Mothers Union Trustee Board, the Global Trustee Board, usually we would have 2 meetings annually in May and in November, and they would be in-person meetings every year. The trustee board hasn't met in person since November of 2019, but we have met well over 15, 16, 17 times in the first year and the second since COVID has come upon us. It's not the same, we're not in person, but we certainly can connect. Next slide, please. And this, of course, is a picture of a screenshot of a Zoom meeting, and this was our Zone B gathering in July of 2020. You may see some familiar faces there. We've learned to join in these Zoom meetings to see each other's smiles and hear each other's voices. We can't hug one another or clasp one another's hands, but the love and the love of our Lord and the love for our movement is certainly there, and we're experiencing it. Next slide, please. Today, in our midday prayers for today, June 19th, this was the part of the reading, and it's from Ephesians 1, verse 3. And it talks about spiritual blessings. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us in the heavenly realms with every spiritual blessing in Christ. And I again highlighted those words, who has blessed us with every spiritual blessing. We have been blessed during these challenging times of COVID with the many ways that we can connect with technology. It has changed the way we work, and it's changed the way we communicate with one another. As I mentioned, it's not good as seeing one another in person, but we are coping and we are managing very well. And I think that we will be changed forever in how we do things. Next slide, please. Mothers Union did change several years ago in its structure, and I just wanted to briefly speak to this. Several years ago, the Constitution was changed worldwide, and they divided us into 11 different zones around the world. And each zone has what we call a zonal trustee. I'm the zonal trustee for Zone B. So on our board, we have 11 trustees from the 11 different zones around the world and a worldwide president. And of course, as you know, in Zone B here, we represent South America, West Indies, USA, and Canada. This was a huge change for Mothers Union. The Constitution was revised, and it was an effort to have a truly international representation on our worldwide trustee board. And indeed, we do. We have an international worldwide president. As you know, Sharon Harper's very much from the West Indies, from Guyana. And we have a male trustee on the board from Scotland, Paul Hindle. So there have been a lot of changes that have occurred over the last several years. 2 firsts, really, for Mothers Union. This took courage and a will to change on the part of the previous trustee board and all of the worldwide council members who voted on this at the time. Next slide, please. So Mothers Union has certainly changed over the last 3 years even, and we've been morphing into this new structure. My role as a zonal trustee is really to be a liaison and a communicator with the provinces in our zone and with the Worldwide Mothers Union. It's allowed us to bring a more international focus to the trustee board, where I can share your stories with the board at that level. In terms of getting to know everyone in our zone, I've been to the USA leading a zonal trustee, a parenting facilitator training course, and I was there for a Maloa workshop. I've done the same in Canada. Of course, you remember we were all, some of you, together in Barbados when we did the first pilot of the Maloa workshops. And I was fortunate enough to attend the Diocese of Jamaica's 120th celebration in September of 2019. So there was, prior to COVID, quite a lot of movement and an opportunity for me to meet so many of you. And I was so very touched last week when someone mentioned at the Thanksgiving service, I think, that I was one of us. I very much do feel that I'm one of us for sure. Next slide, please. So I'm going to take us back to Maloa briefly, just because it has been all about transformation and changing. And the aim of those workshops was to transform our communities. It was first piloted in the Barbados, as you know, and it challenged us to examine the work that we do in our communities, the service that we offer, identifying the people we serve, and meeting their needs in action. It was implemented worldwide, and it allowed us to form a global strategy, a strategy for all of Mothers Union worldwide to live out our aim and our objects. Next slide. Remember those questions we asked everyone. Who do we serve and what influences them? What lasting changes we help to bring about in their lives, and how we contribute. Next slide, please. So remember those questions, who and what and how. We really examined what we were doing, who we were helping, what were the influences, and almost evaluating what we were doing. Next slide, please. Out of those questions and the many, many consultations, over 200,000 members around the world participated in this. We came up with 3 strategic priorities: gender justice, which is about empowering women and girls, giving them a voice and influence, and creating positive gender roles. Next slide, please. The second strategic priority is about peace and safety, trying to eradicate and decrease gender-based violence, keeping the most vulnerable safe from harmful practices. And in many of our provinces around the world, there is much conflict. So another priority was about reconciliation and conflict resolution. Next slide, please. Self-reliance, skills for life. We have a very, very successful literacy program. So making our members and vulnerable people in our communities literate and educated, and offering them stable livelihoods, supporting them in creating stable livelihoods for themselves and their families. Next slide, please. So that work, as I mentioned, was based on input from over 200,000 members around the world. And that's what we have been using to do the work that we do worldwide. We base all of the work in development, all our plans and our objectives on those strategies that came out of the consultation that we had several years ago. Next slide, please. In terms of the work around the world, we have a development committee, which is a committee from the trustee board, and it oversees the work of the development team at Mary Sumner House. It oversees all the work that goes on globally. We have a development team or staff who manage and assist community development coordinators and others in their projects and initiatives around the world. Some of you may know the staff on the development team: Rob Dawes, Naomi Herbert. We work with Abby Sade a lot with our WhatsApp group. Jeanette Lawrence deals with our zone quite a bit. And Alison Mendes does a lot of work with members in the UK. So they are all staff from Mary Sumner House who assist us in doing our work. Back to Mother's Union in a changing world. Some of the things that have come out of COVID, for one, are our midday prayers, which are live on Facebook, Monday to Saturday. They're on Facebook at 12 noon UK time, and that is 8 o'clock my time. And quite often I see members from the USA on it. I see Lena Edmondson is there on it, quite often from Guyana, Australia, all around the world. Australia is like 12 or 13 hours ahead. So when they're coming on, it's 9 o'clock in the evening. But members can either participate with midday prayers together live, and you'll see comments going back and forth. Julia Jameson, I see you there a lot as well. So members can, if it's at an appropriate time, that we can pray together every day live and share comments and share prayer requests and greetings, or they can watch it later in the day on Facebook. That is something that has changed during COVID. Next slide, please. The other thing that we've done is developed a WhatsApp group, and it was initially a way for Mary Sumner House development staff and international members to connect. We discussed how we were managing with COVID, the number of cases. Early on, of course, pretty well everyone was in lockdown, but it was a way to connect with one another. And through those conversations that we had, we would meet weekly on a Thursday morning. For me, it was fairly early. It was 6:30 in the morning. It would have been even earlier for those in the West Indies and the USA. But we would meet and share with one another what we were doing with our stats and our numbers, and also what our members were able to do in helping in their communities, providing food, providing support to those who are vulnerable and isolated. We also developed educational resources that we were able to share with others in the community. Next slide, please. Some of those educational resources dealt with hand washing and distancing and the wearing of masks, information about COVID, what it was about, how it was transmitted. There was prayer support there. There were programs offered on anxiety, the mental health challenges that we were all struggling with through the pandemic. All of this came out of those COVID WhatsApp groups, and we held sessions on them as well. There was also a session on education about vaccinations and the myths and the fear that many people had about the vaccinations. Next slide. More recently, in fact, Thursday of this week, we were focusing on gender-based violence and discussing teenage pregnancies, because we know both of those have increased tremendously during the pandemic. Next slide. So I want to share briefly with you some of the work that's been going on around the world. And as people have been able to come out of lockdown, many of our community development coordinators have been running these programs and continuing to run them with masks and distancing, following the protocols. In Burundi and the Congo, we have members running the literacy program. They run sustainable economic and social empowerment for disadvantaged women, and they run savings and credit programs, which are programs that allow members to borrow and take a loan from the savings and credit, and then they pay back into it, and allows them to support one another and start businesses, very, local businesses in their community. This lady in white that you see in the picture was a woman whom I'd met when I was in Rwanda, and she was a widow and had 5 children, and she was one of the beneficiaries of the Savings and Credit Program, and she was able to take a loan from the Mothers Union Savings and Credit and start selling bananas, and was able to feed her family and take care of her family as her husband had succumbed. Next slide, please. Other projects in the Indian Ocean, they created a COVID response and awareness project, and they ran a disaster resilient project. Many of our members are trained facilitators, much like in the parenting program. And so they have been able to continue to move forward as the world has changed. They've continued with their programs and projects and dealt with the issues at hand as they come up. We have been changing to meet the needs of the people around us. In Kenya, they ran a COVID-19 and a mental health program, and also cross-provincial programs, again, on gender-based violence. Next slide, please. And again, this is one of our community development organizers, Margaret, and she here was teaching hand washing in Sudan. She is a community development worker there. And so this is just a picture of her. You can see the hand washing stations, and she has done much, much work in her province for sure. Next slide. In Rwanda, empowering single women affected by COVID-19. And as I mentioned, there's also the savings and credit programs as well. In South Africa, they're focused on gender-based violence and trauma healing in Mozambique. Next slide. In South Sudan and Sudan, they are separate provinces. They have had a lot of literacy training, the savings and credit, the trauma healing. There have been many, many tribal wars in South Sudan and Sudan, and so there's needed to be a lot of healing. And Mothers Union members have been actively involved in running those programs. Again, gender-based violence and empowering women. In Tanzania, again, the savings and credit through women's empowerment. And in Uganda, they have had media and counseling training for gender-based violence to raise that awareness. And finally, in Ethiopia, again, a literacy program. And the EAGLE program is in some ways similar to the Maloa program, but they work with people in their communities to transform the communities. Next slide. And of course, we have our parenting program. It's active in Papua New Guinea, in Melanesia, in South America, in the USA, West Indies, Australia, and Canada. Unfortunately, we ran a facilitator training program in the USA in October of 2019, just before COVID. And again, we had one in Canada, in Northern Canada, with 7 Indigenous people from the Indigenous Cree community. And then COVID hit. But I was so pleased to hear from Annie Beckley recently, who is the coordinator of the parenting program in USA, that indeed they have started up and been able to get going. So our parenting program has been very successful and continues. Just a little word about that is that we are actually in the process of revamping our curriculum to move forward with it in new ways. And most likely we will be doing some of the programming on Zoom, much like what we're doing today and running webinars. Next slide. I just wanted to share this one with you because this weekend, one of our members from Amare, which is our Mothers Union sisters, they are called Amare in South America, and they are all predominantly Spanish speaking. And this weekend, Priscilla, one of our members, she's the DP of Northern Argentina, Priscilla Briekveld, ran a program on resilience, and I thought that is something that we're probably really going to have to look into as we move out of COVID. With all the challenges that we've experienced, the losses of loved ones, the loss of life, the increase in gender-based violence and teenage pregnancies, just simply the anxiety that we've all experienced. We are going to need to work on that, and I personally think that that is an area that Mothers Union, where we are on the ground, we can be the hands and feet to help people to start to recover from this pandemic for sure. Next slide, please. I didn't mention as well that there is much going on in Britain and Ireland. I didn't speak so much to what we do in West Indies or in Canada or USA. I know certainly in Britain and Ireland, they run the parenting programs, they have prison programs, they have away from it all weekends. So Mothers Union is active around the world, truly active around the world. And I think that we have been, with Maloa and the new strategies and the priorities that we've had, we've already been changing over the last 3 years, and we will continue to change in what we've been doing. Look what we're doing now. In a way, we haven't missed a beat. We immediately joined Zoom, started meeting. You know, the in-person meetings have been a challenge, certainly. And for our elders in our communities who are not quite as adept with computers, there has been isolation, but many of our members have reached out to them and supported them in many, many ways. I have heard so many stories. So I feel that God has prepared us. He's prepared us to be his hands and his feet. We're already working in the needs of those vulnerable and all of those priorities that we've established through Maloa. So in closing, I go back to actually it was a prayer that was said today on midday prayers from St. Boniface, 675 to 754. And I close with this: in our weakness, you are strength. In our darkness, you are light. In our sorrow, you are comfort and peace. We cannot number your blessings. We cannot declare your love. For all your blessings, we bless you. May we live as in your presence and love the things that you love and serve you in our daily lives through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. And thank you.
Amen. Thank you very much, Kathleen, for that inspiring message and for giving us a broad view of what is happening around the world, what recent changes have come about as a result of our present situation. It really is an international organization, and for those of you who didn't know, now I think you're a little bit more understanding of the fact that, you know, we are not alone, and we are sharing our responses with all over the world. So thank you very much for that presentation. Please, members, I remind you to hold your questions, put them in the chat if you like, or take a note of them. I have a couple here for Kathleen when the time is right, and to seek to clarify a couple of the issues that she raised. Thanks again. So we go on to our next presenter. Just give me our next presenter. Just give me a little. And welcome to all those who came on during Kathleen's presentation. I'm sorry if you missed any of it, but we do have a recording so that it will be it will be available afterwards, and we will be able to right. So we're coming a little closer home now. And I am, I mean, your bio seems to have escaped me here. Just now, I'll find it in a minute. Just give me, yeah. Okay, so we're coming a little closer home, and we will. We are now going to introduce our second speaker. She is a banker, or has been a banker, worked with the Scotiabank for 40 years. She has served on the board of the Alpha Home for Boys, a Roman Catholic home. Many of the top musicians in Jamaica were trained in this institution. She has served on the board of the Fort Augusta Prison for Women. She has also served on the fundraising committee for the Jamaica Cancer Society. She has served again on the fundraising committee for the voluntary organization for the upliftment of children called Vouch. She was brought up at St. George's Anglican Church in Kingston, taught Sunday school, and was a member of the junior and senior choirs. She now attends church at St. John the Evangelist, Maryvale, Kingston, and she was the rector's warden under several priests, lay reader and lay reader. She was the head of the Altar Guild, director of the junior choir. She has been a Mothers Union member for over almost 50 years, served as branch enrolling member, deputy regional president, and now diocesan president. She's also the vice president of the provincial executive and presently provincial president. And we welcome to the microphone our second speaker to give us the perspective from the province, Mrs. Hermin Price. Hermin?
Thank you very much.
Recording in progress.
Reverend Beverly Hoyt, chaplain, members of the clergy, Mrs. Kathleen Snow, Zone B, trustee, President Bernice Felix, immediate past President Valerie West, invited dignitaries, my brothers and sisters in Christ. Good afternoon, good night, or good morning, wherever you're listening from. I must again congratulate the Mothers Union in the Diocese of Trinidad and Tobago on the anniversary of 100 years of dedicated service in the diocese. And I thank you for including me to share on this platform. On the flyers advertising the panel discussion, you will note the theme. And I'm going to talk in the perspective of the West Indies. Mothers Union in a changing world. The Mothers Union, as you know, is a worldwide organization covering 84 countries with a membership of over 4 million. And each country has its own particular needs and therefore engages in projects based on their needs. Coming to the West Indies. In the year 1992, His Grace Archbishop Orland Lindsay established the Provincial Council of the Mothers Union in the West Indies. The inaugural meeting of the council took place in Barbados in 1993, and in 1997, a booklet was published titled A Brief History of the Mothers Union in the Province of the West Indies. And in his foreword, he said, I think that it is the opinion of many persons that the mission of the church in the province, and especially in the promotion of Christian family life, has been enhanced greatly by the work of the Mothers Union and what they have been doing in both parish and diocesan levels. He further stated that it is unfortunate, however, that largely because of the scattered nature of our province and the unavailability of information, the members of the Mothers Union in the diocese did not know much about what is happening or being done in other places than their own. This has now changed. And over the years, the council and the executive committee continue to meet. Decisions are made and changes brought about. And members felt connected and bonded to one another as they became aware of what was happening in each diocese. Later on, our mission statement was formatted and printed. My brothers and sisters, as a lover of the music of Bob Marley, especially for his conscious lyrics, I quote 2 lines from the album Buffalo Soldier. And it goes like this: if you know your history, then you would know where you're coming from. And I also added, and you would know where you want to go. As members of the Mothers Union, we are all aware of how and why this noble organization was formed under the leadership of our founder, Mary Sumner. Hence, we all know where we are coming from. However, I will provide a history, and I hope I won't bore you. The purpose of the Mothers Union was to specially concerned with all that strengthens and preserves marriage and Christian life. Its aim was for the advancement of the Christian religion in the sphere of marriage and family life. Over time, the organization grew and certain specific objects were included. Listed among them, to oppose Christ's teaching on the nature of marriage and promote its wider understanding. However, as we look at our overall purpose, it is important to note that marriage was at the forefront of our objects. And today, we are faced with all kinds of marriages, same-sex marriages, persons who live together and do not believe in the sacrament of marriage, but believe that their commitment to each other makes them married, and therefore it is not important to go before a pastor. People are now getting married in all kinds of places and using all kinds of ceremonies and vows. We are now in a changing world. Times are changing, values and attitudes are changing, and so, as Mothers Union members, we have to find innovative ways of working and dealing with these issues while believing in our own teachings of the church. As we continue to follow in the footsteps of Mary Sumner, we learned that she was not afraid to act outside of social norms, to do what she believed to be right. And the story is told that at a time when unmarried girls with children were condemned and cast out, she cared for and protected her niece, who at age 14 had an illegitimate child. And she took this child in her home. Now, can you imagine this happening in the vicarage at that time? And maybe even now? But how do we deal with these issues in our churches at a time like this? Do we show love and compassion and inclusiveness? Yes, we are aware that there will be resistance from members of the establishment, but we cannot be afraid to speak up and act on difficult situations. As leaders, we have a responsibility to act and make our voices heard in a changing world. Maintaining a worldwide fellowship of Christians united in worship and service. Prayer is the primary activity of our organization and on which all its work depends. Hence, prayer and worship are at the very heart and core of our service. The service is necessary expression of our prayers and worship. We are rooted in a worldwide fellowship, linked through our daily wave of prayer, our midday prayers, our regular participation in the worship of the church. We must bear in mind that this worldwide fellowship should have an economical outlook. And this includes people of any faith or no faith. We go on to promoting conditions in society favorable to stable family life and the protection of children. This one is quite implicit, for clearly an organization concerned to uphold Christian marriage will be concerned about the social pressures and influences that affect it. This issue is often the aspect of the Mothers Union work that appeals to a lot of women, young and old. And you can see and feel this work through the work of the parenting program. And Kathleen spoke about the parenting program before this. Helping those whose family life has met with adversity. Unfortunately, in the past, quite unfairly, but nonetheless widely, the Mothers Union has been considered more consensus than concerned. There are instances where women who have children and not married, women who are divorced or separated and living good lives were not openly welcomed in our organization. Therefore, it is now important to spell out concern for all families and all mothers, particularly those who most need support and friendship. Hence, we are working in this area. Remember though, that it is not only the divorced or separated women who should be looked to in the Mothers Union for understanding and help. There are other adversities in family life which challenges compassion, practical response, like an invalid, a mentally or physically ill adult or child, a father or a mother in prison, the homeless, and the problems are endless. And this is where our hearts and minds are required to be opened. I must bring to your attention that particular circumstances will indicate where they are most needed. So, listen to this. We should bear in mind that we cannot, as Mothers Union members, be involved in every situation, as sometimes professionals can do a better job. And again, we have taken issue with this. I wouldn't say taking issue. We have looked into this and we have been reporting to the several authorities in charge when things like these are needed. Over the years, the image of the Mothers Union has changed and will continue to change. As we listen to the voices of people in church and communities, we have become more inclusive. Our membership is now open to all who have been baptized in the name of the Holy Trinity and intend to support and work in the service of God and the organization. Members are not all mothers. They can be single, married, grandparents, men, or young adults. We are much more visible and involved in the lives of churches and communities, actively working with government agencies and other advocate groups through prayer, financial support, as well as working at the grassroots levels in the programs that can meet the needs of those in want. As each diocese meets the needs of their own communities, our projects are many and varied. And some of these programs are the parenting program, children's homes, daycare centers, feeding, school feeding programs, also breakfast programs, homework centers, feeding indigents, or we call them street people. And we have a program in Jamaica that we call Meals on Wheels. And this is where ladies will provide meals, put them in their cars, and drive around and hand them out to people who are on the street. Prison ministry, visitation of those in prison, and especially the youngsters, because sometimes some of them, they have no one to visit them, and they just need someone to talk to express how they are feeling. And this ministry has been going on for a while and has become very, very important to us. Self-help projects, income generating, such as sewing, farming, and also skills training. We also give assistance to dioceses in times of disaster. I know that I've taken up a lot of your time in repeating the Mothers Union story. However, I am obliged to give a synopsis of a milieu process, and Kathleen did something on it a while ago. Milieu, Mothers Union, listening, observing, and acting. This process enables us to globally envision a new Mothers Union in the 21st century and beyond. This process will enable Mothers Union at all levels to be better equipped to listen to the voices of the people we serve and have insights into how to work more effectively together to bring lasting and holistic change. Also, individuals and members across the globe will be inspired and energized in their relationship with God, thus enabling them to effectively make a difference in church and community. This process was officially introduced in the West Indies in 217 and launched in 2018 rather. As we look to the future of the Mothers Union in this challenging world, and especially in the West Indies, we realize that changes are happening. The organization has become more inclusive. We have a worldwide constitution, a new constitution. We have a board of trustees, which includes members from all over the world. And our present worldwide president is from the province of the West Indies, making her the first worldwide president outside of the United Kingdom to be named president. This is change. As we face the challenges of the COVID pandemic at this time, changes have become a reality. Hence, we have become more innovative in doing our diverse projects. We have to be transformational and embrace these changes if we are to accomplish our mandate. We need to develop and enable all kinds of social, economic, personal, and relational attitude in order to strengthen family life. Campaigning for social justice for those marginalized, and as we deliver Christian care. And we have been very active in helping persons who have been marginalized. We have been very active in helping women who have been abused, children who have been abused. The Mothers Union have been very active in these areas. And so, as we deliver and as we change our attitudes, we remember our history. The forefront of our work is our prayer life. And so I leave with you this reading from John chapter 13. And this is done, I thought about this because of our relationships with others, our relationships with our church sisters, relationship with Mothers Union members, relationship with people who are in want. Our relationship should be loving and flourishing. And so here I quote, I give you a new commandment. Love one another as I loved you. So you are to love one another. If there is love coming from you, then all will know that you are my disciples. And as disciples, I'm asking us all to think on these things. Think on our history. Think on where we are and think on where we are going. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Price. Thank you for outlining the activities that you are now performing. Even though the environment is changing, you have held fast to your very core activities, maintaining the values in the midst of change. Thank you very much for that and giving us an outline of the work in the province. We appreciate it very much. Right, so we move closer to home again. We're getting very close to home now. And we have our third speaker to invite to the microphone. She was a primary school teacher for over 30 years, primary school principal for over 8 years. She holds a diploma in human resource management from the Cipriani Labour College, a bachelor's degree in education from the University of the West Indies in St. Augustine, Trinidad. Her church activities include being a vestry member, a member of synod, teacher of confirmation classes, social events coordinator at St. Mark's in Point Four, where she resides. She's a former branch leader of the Mothers Union, regional chairperson. She has been training coordinator, diocesan vice president, and she's now was recently elected as the president of our local Mothers Union, Diocesan Mothers Union. She was a former committee member on the Provincial Council of the Mothers Union and also participated in the Muloa training in Canada recently. Well, the last time they had the program. So it is my distinct pleasure to invite to the podium none other person than our current diocesan president, Mrs. Bernice Hewitt. Bernice?
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President and Chair Moderator for this evening's activity. Reverend Beverly Hoyt, Mothers Union Chaplain, other members of the clergy, Kathleen Snow, Zonal Trustee, Herman Price, Provincial President, past presidents, Mothers Union President of Trinidad and Tobago, Mothers Union members, friends, well-wishers, a very pleasant good afternoon to you all, and a warm welcome to all. My task this afternoon is to give an overview of the Mothers Union in Trinidad and Tobago and to explain how we plan to navigate in a changing world. As we celebrate 100 years, we can look back and reflect on our journey up to this point. And we can look forward to the future with great expectations. My vision for this state-based organization is to see a vibrant, caring, all-inclusive group of persons committed to the spiritual, social, and moral development of individuals and families in an environment of peace, love, hope, and confidence. The Mothers Union is an international Christian organization which was established by Mary Sumner in the UK in 1876. In Trinidad and Tobago, however, this state-based organization began 100 years ago in 1921. The first branch of the Mothers Union was opened at All Saints Anglican Church in Port of Spain. Over the years, the membership has grown to over 600 persons with several branches across the Twin Island states. According to the Mothers Union Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, the structure of the Mothers Union consists of an executive committee, diocesan council, regional councils, and parochial branches. The diocesan council includes the president, the vice president, the secretary, assistant secretary, treasurer, assistant treasurer, past presidents, the chaplain, chairman, and secretaries of the three regions, North, South, and Tobago. The purpose of the Mothers Union is to be specially concerned with all that strengthens and preserves marriage and Christian family life. The aim of the society is the advancement of the Christian religion in the sphere of marriage and family life. In order to carry out its aims, its objects are to uphold Christ's teaching on the nature of marriage and to promote its wider understanding, to encourage parents to bring up their children in the faith and life of the church, to maintain a worldwide fellowship of Christians united in prayer, worship, and service, to promote conditions in society favorable to stable family life and the protection of children, to help those whose family life has met with adversity. This organization is able to achieve its mandate through the activities of the various committees such as prayer and spirituality, social action, faith and policy, indoor member prayer circle, and parenting. The central theme of each committee is the demonstration of love for our fellow men. Each committee develops an action plan for the year and execute these plans with the assistance of the entire council. At this point, permit me to mention the leadership training which the council is scheduled to participate in next week. We look forward to a very productive and successful outcome. Participation in activities such as this will sharpen our leadership skills and hence make us more confident and effective in our ministry. In April 2018, immediate past President Valerie West and I were fortunate to participate in the MULOA training in Canada. It was a very rewarding and enlightening exercise. That project has been one of the global strategies the Mothers Union has used in response to the changing environment. The acronym MULOA means Mothers Union, Listening, Observing, and Acting. Due to this conversation, we reach out to members of the community by listening to their problems, observing their situation, and taking positive actions to satisfy their needs, be it physical, emotional, spiritual. We also partner with resource persons and professionals to make the appropriate interventions. The Mothers Union of Trinidad and Tobago continues to be proud of the establishment of the Mothers Union Children's Home. This vision became a reality through the dedication, commitment, and caring nature of persons such as Dean Dr. Nolly Clark, our first chaplain, Mrs. Abdullah, wife of former Bishop Clive Abdullah, Mrs. Joan Jones, who was the first provincial president, and Mrs. Esther Crawford, past president and former manager of the home. The present manager is Mrs. Joan Hanif. Our gratitude goes out to them and all those who were instrumental in seeing this institution become a reality. Over the years, the Mothers Union has commissioned several men to the organization, including our own Archdeacon, Reverend Dr. Steve West. We continue to encourage more men to join us in this ministry as we make a difference in the lives of the disadvantaged in our society. It is important to note that the Mothers Union of Trinidad and Tobago is also a member of the Provincial Mothers Union, and we continue to participate actively, with the present Vice President being our own past president, Mrs. Valerie West. We also hold the title of having the first provincial president in the person of Mrs. Joan Jones. Meetings are held physically every year in a different country in the province. But due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to meet virtually last year, and we are scheduled to do the same later this year. We also continue to communicate with Mary Sumner House through our zonal trustee, Mrs. Kathleen Snow. These partnerships are necessary for sharing of information and support, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and psychologically. In order to make a positive impact on the lives of persons in our community, we have to be aware of the changing environment in which we operate. We have to adjust our strategies and methods of delivery so we can continue to be relevant. We now live in a global village where information is transmitted by the touch of a switch. Hence, within seconds, one can communicate with persons around the world. Unlike 1921, when the first Mothers Union branch was opened in Trinidad and Tobago, the term cell phone and iPad were not in our vocabulary. This realization is the signal for us to organize and participate in the technological training, which will enable us to attract younger persons to our organization. We are aware of the task ahead, but we continue to maintain hope and confidence to overcome any challenges we may encounter. We always keep God at the center of all our activities. As we look to the future, we will build on the strengths and work to eliminate our weaknesses. This is a ministry which requires teams of committed, dedicated, and caring persons, like those who laid the foundation over the last 100 years. The Mothers Union will continue to grow from strength to strength in Trinidad and Tobago, with a great team of compassionate individuals at the council level, the regional level, and the branch level. We look forward to continue the following activities as we forge ahead in 2021, namely our spiritual development, Bible study, quiet days, retreats, children ministries, our social outreach programs, creating food banks, distribution of food, supplies to school children, a greater emphasis on parenting, visits to schools, PTA, workshops, visits to antenatal clinics, more support for persons in adversity, victims of natural disaster, keeping in touch with the sick and shut-ins via telephone, attracting younger persons to join, persons with physical challenges, persons who have special skills, We will encourage them to be part of the organization. We will continue the Milua conversation. We will continue to support the Mothers Union Children's Home, actively assisting financially, physically, and visiting as often as we can. Strengthening our partnership with organizations, training of our members for discipleship, and also put in the use of the technology. These are some of the activities we hope to focus on as we navigate this changing world. As I close, permit me to thank God for his steadfast love and mercy. Thanks to all our bishops, past and present, all clergy, past presidents, all members, supporters, friends, and well-wishers, all donors, all organizations who work with us. We are very grateful for your support, and we pray that the relationship will continue as we begin the journey into the next century. God bless you all. I thank you.
Thank you very much, President Bernice. Thank you for re-emphasizing the fact that the Trinidad and Tobago group of Mothers Union members continue to navigate our way through these changes that you've identified, and the fact that we need clearly to adjust our strategies in order to remain relevant. And thank you for sharing with the membership some of the projects and so on that we're going to do among the members and among the community. So we look forward to the progress of the Mothers Union of Trinidad and Tobago. Thanks very much. So we move on to our final speaker. And it was Mrs. Price a little while ago who mentioned that one of the changes that is happening, and I guess it's in the province as well, is that we recognize the need to include more professionals in our circle in order for us to achieve some of the changes that we need. This young lady who is coming on next is one of these such professionals. She is devoted to a Christ-led life. She lives with a purpose to seek for justice for underprivileged persons and those who live at the margins of society. So we're talking about the marginalized and so on. Clearly, it falls straight in our garden. And these marginalized persons include women, children, and men made vulnerable by their life circumstances. We're sure she fits in well with our aims and objects. She's the mother of 3 adult daughters with whom she is fully involved. It was in seeking to bring about substantial transformative change in the issues for which she is passionate that she pursued paths within state institutions that would lead to, 1, increased awareness of gender inequality in the society, again, identifying the relevance with the Mothers Union. 2, the reform of systems and approaches to address gender injustice experienced by adolescents, women, men, and families living in poverty, and also to lead to policies to address discrimination and harm experienced by individuals and groups. So you see why we have to hold on to her? Yeah. She was among the first teachers trained as a guidance officer. She served tirelessly in that area before joining the newly established National Family Services Division as a family life educator. She has previously served as the first director of the Division of Women's Affairs of the Government of Trinidad and Tobago from 94 to 97, during which she led the Trinidad and Tobago delegation to the 4th World Conference on Women. And this is a shortened biography. Eh? Oh, she managed the Canadian Gender Equality Fund, a regional program of support to women's organizations, governments, and the private sector to build capacity and systems for the agenda of women's rights. In 2003, she joined the Caribbean Development Bank in Barbados as its first gender equality specialist. There you go. advocating for a central position for gender equality in the bank's operations. This meant ensuring that the bank's commitments to gender equality were strongly embedded in loans and grants for poverty reduction and social and economic development. Some of what Kathleen was talking about today, regionally, internationally. Working strategically and tirelessly, her work also helped the bank to focus on gender injustice in its administrative and government systems. She retired from the bank in 2017 as the Gender Equality Advisor to the Vice President and continues the mission of justice and equality for all within the Anglican Diocese of Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados as she transitions back to her homeland. It is my pleasure to welcome to this Mothers Union webinar one other person than Mrs. Denise Noel Dipic. Denise, you have the microphone.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mrs. Weston. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. So let me formally address my welcome to the zonal trustee, Kathleen Snow, the provincial president, the president and past presidents of the Mothers Union, executive members and the chaplain, Reverend Beverly Hoyt, and other participating clergy, friends of the Mothers Union, other friends, those who are peeping in over their mothers' shoulders online, and all young people. So I'm delighted to share in this celebration of this 100th anniversary of a mission initiative church, which demonstrates Christian faith through working with people of all faiths and no faith to develop communities, strengthen families, and advocate for change. I was very, very happy to hear again and again the changes that have happened over the years. My second daughter told me when I was asking her how I should go forward with this presentation, she said, well, you need to say that there were some concerns by your grandmother, who would now have been 96 or 97, about the focus of the Mothers Union. And I suppose at that time, the fact that some people were alienated from being members. She was very concerned. So my presentation today honors the contribution of the many heroic women who have built this organization over the last century, beginning with those who established it at a turning point in the relationship between the colonies and the Imperial British government. That is, when it was established in the West Indies. It was a time of labor organizing, when women supported the movement for self-government, struggled to get women elected for political office, struggled to be more visible generally in places of decision-making, sometimes against the prejudice of the governing system and of their own men. They also assisted the working class and attended to mobilizing women within unions. That would have been 100 years ago. I particularly want to give credit to the outstanding work of the Mothers Union of Trinidad and Tobago, or the Diocese of Trinidad and Tobago in recent years, its openness, its bridge building, and the fortitude it had in representing the church in spaces which may not have been represented before, with other women's organizations, and having a voice in fora with the state. In this presentation, I'm going to use a bit of creative writing that may have been inspired by historical events. As well, I would use the testimonies of women and young women as authentic representations of women's lives. And I want to say why I'm doing this. I want to take us back to why this work. Why this work? Because sometimes we get caught up in the jargon, as you heard, gender this, gender that, and we forget that this business came out of the actual life experiences and still comes out of the actual life experiences of women everywhere. But of course, each woman has a different situation Each woman's life is different every day, but there are some generalities, but there are some very specific circumstances which we seek to support. So the title of it is Radical Change in Radical Times. And we've heard a lot. But I will run through mine very quickly. It's a difficulty of coming last, but that's okay. So why the title? Well, we are in the first quarter of the 21st century, a time of rapid change and much uncertainty. Uncertainty not only by economic and social impacts of the pandemic, but also by crises at borders, political crises, climate crises. It's a time too when market forces are having direct impacts on economies. National budgets have been sorely depleted, livelihoods threatened, and the availability and accessibility of traditional social protection services, which you would find in communities, have been significantly reduced. It is a time of rapid technological advancement and accessibility, but the use of this technology has been put to calling out to promote ideas of unworthiness of certain groups of human beings, and promoting ideologies that threaten freedom and humanity at large. It is also a time when social care within communities is depleted. Societies are also reimagining public safety in response to racism and increasing crime. It is a time when inequalities based on what you look like, your sex, your race, who your parents are, where you grew up, all these inequalities have been laid bare. And yet they are oftentimes the determinants of how things are distributed, whether it's roads, whether it's lights, whether it's water, whether it's transport. The scourge of gender-based violence continues unabated, and is fueled by gendered attitudes, perceptions of the role and position of men and women differently, behaviors based on assumptions of who has power and who doesn't, even in our churches, stereotypes, expectations, and harmful social norms that are entrenched in the relations between people in society. Experiences of women are still negated and depoliticized. The experience is isolated from the social structures that have failed them. There is still little policy which integrates women's needs for the provision of public services and goods, such as safe transport. And in Trinidad, we have seen that quite a lot. I don't want to have to bring it forward. And safe transport would mean safe public transport, which includes safe walking paths, lighting, etc. Decent work, effective reproductive health care and well-being. And these have a great impact on women's lives. Mothers and their needs are also marginalized. Women's lives are still rendered invisible in public documents by the disappearance of women into people, into parents, into families, into vendors, into cashiers. Must we always ask, to whom are you referring? In this time, the call of our church is towards full humanity through welcoming, justice-driven mission. Mary Sumner responded to the call nearly 200 years ago with faith, values, and beliefs that promote safety, autonomy, and respect. So I just want to take us back a little bit to that time, because the abolitionists at the time, just after slavery, wrote a call to Christian women in 1834. It said, women, especially those who are victims of every species of degradation and cruelty, in many respects, more afflictive than when they bore the name of slaves. Flogging is continued to a most frightful extent. The small ration of food formerly allowed is considerably diminished. Several of the poor apprentices have said in the bitterness of the anguish that they would be glad if 1st August 1834 had never come. They wish things were as they were before. And the letter goes on. Will you not join us, Christian daughter? Will you not make some effort for her, that is, woman, whose infancy is without soothings of tenderness, her childhood without guidance, her maturity without protection or self-respect? So I'm putting that forward. That was 1834, and that would have been the time that the Union was launched in response to women's lives. And these what was described were women who were now no longer slaves, but of course, the transition would have been extremely difficult. But there was a response and a request of Christian women to get on board.
Began baka adi.
So, I use another example. This is taken from Toni Morrison, who again spoke of a freed slave, Margaret Garner. And she describes this in her book, Beloved, who was celebrated in the post-slavery era. She was a young mother who, having escaped slavery, was arrested for killing one of her children, rather than letting him be returned to the owner's plantation. She became a celebrity in the fight against the fugitive slave laws. She risked everything for what was deemed to be for freedom. Yet, Morrison writes, in the 1980s, the debate was still rolling, as it is rolling now. Equal pay, equal treatment, access to professions, schools and choice without stigma. And we know in our own diocese that that's still occurring. From a history of marriage being discouraged, impossible or illegal, there was now still having discussions about who will marry. This was a history in which birth of children was required, but having them, being responsible for them, being their parent was out of the question as freedom was. So I say again, I was remarking today, now I could probably understand why some of that is still, vestiges of that are still around. So what are the questions for us? What is troubling? Why does freedom seem so constraining and oppressive for some women and girls? Don't we have it? What must be dismantled and why? How difficult is it to reimagine a just and equal society and our contribution to it now? How can a restored church culture based on sound theological underpinnings of equality and justice come about? How can we make the Mothers' Union's objects tangible and our approach missional in the realities of a post-COVID world? So now I'm in Trinidad. So the 2016 Shadow Report of Trinidad and Tobago, presented to the Committee for the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, makes clear broad challenges to women and families as they live in communities. It speaks to injustice, economic injustice, to the lack of fair treatment for women in certain circumstances, and asks for accountability from the state on programs it has initiated, such as programs for men. Are they being sustained? Or what is the data saying? What is the success, the achievement? It raised concerns about the role of religious organizations in decision-making by the state on critical issues such as the protection of the rights of girl children from early marriage. Point to note. So the deep underlying challenges to our women and families are, first, economic, that is, looking at the precarious nature of labor and unemployment. And here I speak to particularly, not only, I want to speak to those on the street where we call the informal sector, but the informality of labor. Am I still on?
Yes, you are.
Because I'm
Yes,
seeing
yes, you are.
strange screen. Okay. So I'm saying that the informality of labor, it's not just what is on the street. That many people have been put on 3-month contracts. It is part of government policy, and so on and so on. And what has also come to my attention is that they have not been paying into national insurance. So the labor is precarious. Another challenge is access to services, the Social Security, as I just said, the NIS, who if you are not involuntarily paying, then what happens to you? If your employer does not pay, then you have to do it, but you may not have the time and the money, and this becomes an issue for you because you may have to use the money elsewhere in a different space. Another thing is the access to food, because costs have gone up tremendously. Housing is unavailable, rents are high, and we can go on. And that these are main concerns of women and also of men. But think of the women who have children, who have no job, and so on and so on. Transport is another service that has become concerning. And another concerning issue for all of us is the availability of supportive care services. So it's not only to look at care and value care, but the care is probably sometimes not even available for those people who need it. Finally, another underlying challenge for us is the security in relationships, workplaces, and communities. So we don't need much imaginative space to break through the deception of equality and freedom that exists. Though we hear much in the society describing the women, what else do they want? What we do know and what we need to keep our eyes on is the unapologetic acceptance of shame and terror that contributes to silence, hurt, and erodes women's capacities to care, to work, and to aspire. Let me share some examples of women, many of them within our parishes, in our pews, whose lives as mothers we do not see. Their children are in the child protection schemes and they cannot visit them. They are picking up pieces with their children after loss of relationships, of jobs, of homes. They are mothering young adult children with mental illness or in homes with three generations. Their sons have been killed or are now incarcerated, and the community life is disrupted by crime, by constant policing, which does not stop. These women ask for justice for themselves, for their communities. They say, what about justice for us? They need support. They are judged and marginalized. They are in difficult relationships with their daughters and sons and cannot understand why. Situations in need of reconciliation. They are mothering in families where there's a significant disability. They are older mothers, lost and hurt. They have shut their doors to sons or daughters who live with differently expressed sexualities. They are angry, ashamed, and scared. In meeting these women, they can seem silenced, but give them a chance and they can be expressive about the difficulties they encounter as a result of their marginalization. And they also risk the wrath of others when they speak. This seems to be a paradox that is very bewildering. The church in this century continues to have significant opportunity to make a difference to women who lie at these intersections, who are squeezed there, or who are at the margin, whose voices we may never hear. Because, of course, we call them marginalized. But it is because they live in a non-dominant space, I call it. They're not powerless and they're not helpless. So the church has an opportunity to reach, support, and we've heard a lot of it coming through the former presentations. Mandy Marshall, Director of Gender Justice of the Anglican Communion, asks that we seek lost voices. She asks, have they left the church? Go where they are, hear their stories, grow their confidence, give them a space to speak. I pause. So let's go into the church, whom we represent. Listen to the perception shared by young women and young men in our churches. Those are the people you wish to engage in your mission. They will sustain your efforts through the century. They are present in congregations, observing behaviors that do not reflect what they are taught. So they see inequity, ambivalence, ambiguity, and do not understand why. Now, this, of course, is not all young people, young women, and young men. The young women bear scars of abuse and are taunted by the silence or the threat of isolation. They see dominance and relations that are not embracing and forgiving. In fact, they see a reflection of the world outside within the church, and as they grow older, they would like the opportunity to change that world. They do not feel safe and want spaces for their children and their families. They want to experience generosity, feel respected, and have their worth valued. They want to be invigorated, revived with experiences that equip them for the vagaries of life. I think all of this supports what the provincial president shared. It was like the backdrop. Probably all of this is hard to hear, especially in the last presentation of a celebration. But this is, and so much more, what is our early mothers faced, and those who embraced the mission of the Mothers' Union. The Mothers' Union in the 21st century is therefore well placed to be a light and refuge for women and families, with a reach into communities, and that must be restored. I will now share a few guiding thoughts with you as the key women's organization of the church and the major representative of the church in the National Women's Collective. I draw on the writings of, first, Archbishop Rowan Williams, who encourages a different way of doing mission. He refers to it as the mixed economy, one in which something fresh, inclusive, and economical can be created by bringing together relationships in the church, different groups who are generous and trust each other in the same setting. So it would not, you are on that path already, I must say, and I was very pleased to hear. The other person I want to refer to is the very Reverend Dr. Shelley Antinia from her 2019 dissertation, Making Space for Young Adults in the New Wine Vineyard. I have drawn on this work for its articulation of the perceptions of young adults in the church. She offers 4 principles to frame a missional approach to engage young adults. Care and nurture, foster confidence, deliver with competence, and engage in quality connections, not quantity, but quality. And finally, the third person that I refer to is the Episcopalian priest, Cynthia Bougot, who, drawing on the significance of Mary Magdalene as the woman at the heart of Christianity, reminds us of 2 things. First, the value of the contemplative heart, from which comes sacredness and a deep compassion for action. Secondly, she says that institutional reform, if that's the way you want to go, tends to emerge from the bottom up. So that's where the work must start. She adds that the real task at hand for all of us, whether church going or not, is to create these new wineskins to hold the new wine. I'll read it again. She says that the real is to create new wineskins to hold the new wine, work that will likely go on in small spaces like parish spaces. Acknowledging this, I wish to offer 2 approaches as we go forward. One group with introspection, and I want to suggest a deeper integration of the Mothers' Union in the faith-based mission of the church. focusing on developing stronger connections within parishes and congregations, because that is where the real work has to be done. So in introspection, I say, be self-aware. Understand and appreciate the gifts you have and the value of your gift. That, as mothers, you gift life. You gift life to the society, and that life cannot be exchanged. There's no transaction. You give it and you keep giving continually. And as a matter of fact, others see you giving and they appreciate the giving. So it's unconditional. The other is measure your worth, not on numbers, not on quantity, but on the quality of relationships with which you are connected. This is not a boast. Ultimately, is the strength for the journey. Third, seek opportunity. As the challenges get bigger, you go deeper. I think it came out of my head, but I was wondering if it's something that I heard similar to Mrs. Obama. I don't know, and I don't pretend to be walking in her footsteps. As a purpose-driven organization, consider the change you wish to bring about. The objects you carry are very broad. They only define the path for the organization, and we were reminded by, I think it was the provincial president, that there is a lot of opportunity to situate your particular project or so in your community, and it will be different from anybody else's. And the other area of introspection is focus efforts on the root of the challenges or problems that you witness or hear about, or that are shared in broad terms. So everybody speaks of gender-based violence. That's fine. What is the root of this thing you question as mothers, or representing mothers, representing families? That's the question. So can we do anything about it? How can we find a solution already in the work that we do? This is where solutions are to be grounded. This is where it all originates, in family groups. Be welcoming. Welcome uncertainty and be willing to take risks to be innovative. Remember that the problem may look the same, but over time and with more investigation, the solutions may be very different, requiring different resources or networking across lay ministries, across spaces where the church has a presence or not. You may also wish to scale up and broaden what you're already doing. The second area, and I'm coming to the end, is what I see. What do I see as you go through the 21st century? I see a responsive mothers' union, a bold, responsive organization committed to restoring the visibility of the Anglican Church as a place of healing and restoration for women from every walk of life with their families. And to do that through actions that challenge inequity, discrimination, and the injustice of gender equity within and outside the church, by appealing for justice and equity in specific areas of church life. Reverend Bogo, excuse me, suggests that this is an easy task because it does not require a journey beyond the boundaries of the New Testament, because that's what Jesus did. So there should be no convincing. The second broad area that I see of this as you go forward, and I look at you, is that there is this, and it's already birthed, so it's really now to bloom, a new identity to address the thrusts of our time. How is that happening? That you'll be working in partnership with and across lay ministries, and you're intentional, engaging with the gifts of men, young adults, and with respect for the wisdom of the elderly. That you find common ground with other organizations for broader ecumenical mission to families in communities. And that already is happening in the province. To strongly promote and model changes of change in harmful cultural norms. I want to say it again. to strongly promote and model change in harmful cultural norms in all your programs, grounded in faith, scripture, and theology. Engage in a mission-oriented approach to the design and delivery of programs. So it is not just a project running along in a straight line with you and some others, but if you are in a parish, other ministries might be involved, and you encourage it. You lose nothing by sharing. You lose nothing by sharing. I'll say it again. You lose nothing by sharing. And that I see you as an open and committed to be open, that I see you as open and committed to knowing, understanding, reimagining, and sharing knowledge and building capacity to inform your work. Finally, that you are intentional about inclusion. And I've heard that word from the first speaker, the trustee, coming down the line. And here I talk about reaching out to strengthen the smallest unit or units. So if there's a place, a parish with a unit of its 2, what, are we going to be blind to that? Is it that there's nothing happening in that parish community? And how can we help? And I remember being part of I'll call it a parish mission, going to help another parish and have worship there and giving our collection there to help them put on a roof or help them put on electricity or something. And I think the particular parish priest is listening. So strengthening the smallest unit. That is at the core, as Cynthia talks about. It's out of heart. And it's out of a space to you know, we always say women learn from the experiences of women. We learn that we are sisters, despite what anybody says about we are worst enemies and lots of nonsense, because we're human, eh? But based in our hearts, we give life. So destruction is not really what we are about. Something else is about that, but not what really we are about. So, another thing is that we promote compassion, empathy, and spiritual care as key pathways to nonviolence and safe families. That we consciously promote compassion, empathy, and spiritual care. And this work is not easy work, where norms of strange behaviors and calling out and talking about people in all kinds of ways, behind, in front, below their backs, it's going to be very difficult because culturally, we seem to be engaged in this measure of destruction. And it's transmitted to children, it's transmitted in workplaces. So who will do this work if we as mothers are gift givers? Is this the gift we want to give? Modeling safety, that's what we try to do, that's what I'm seeing you as. Emotional safety, physical safety, spiritual safety. And having the courage as colleagues to go to visit. Are you okay? Can I come visit with you? Because people are isolated. They're isolated in the congregation and in the church business spaces. As I pondered on how these may be sustained over the century, I thought of the young women and men among us, those to come and those living at the margins. And some of their labels and they're seeking justice. So I share my own plea for you to treasure their worth. Do create safe spaces for them. They desire to continue your work. And here I say they, and I just don't say the young women or the young men. I say they because this is where I end. I wish to quote from the Intenia's study. Young adults are hopeful and clear about the unique value they add to the church. Their responses indicate that faithful and careful listening to that faithful and careful listening to each other builds community, fosters deeper understanding and hopefulness. Young adults have clear expectations of the church as it relates to its practice, its culture, and its purpose. According to them, it is to be a place of encounter and prayer, where loving, caring relationships are experienced and fostered, and where there's a welcome without judgment to a safe and active family life community. Boogaloo says, referring to Mary Magdalene, through Mary's very essence, she was able to weave into one whole cloth strands that have been traditionally kept so stringently separated. She wove a strand of conscious love, of healing, of kenotic surrender, the feminine, and singleness. I see this as your work of transformation, that you knit things together, you weave things together to transform individuals, your organization and its responses, and the church, with a beautiful woven tapestry in years to come. The opportunity is now. The technologies afford us new and exciting ways to reach and teach and may even support. But it begins with critical thinking, letting go, and reimagining. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Noel Dibik. You know, I was sitting here trying to summarize your presentation, but it was challenging because of the number of very potent statements that you made, ranging from a scenario involving pre-emancipation, coming right down to the present situation and making a comparison between the two. And looking at what I particularly liked was the solutions that you gave in terms of introspection and integration of the Mothers Union within the society. I think that in its own could encapsulate a lot of what you said, because you presented a lot of justification for widening our scope of activity to ensure that the marginalized and so on are not left behind, as happened in the early days. So thank you very much for your presentation, and I'm glad that we have it recorded so that we go back, time permitting, and break it down and convert some of those words of wisdom into strategies and action plans and so on, and really make you proud of the fact that you were responsible for part of our progress and success. So thank you very much.
I still be a friend.
You still will be a friend. We'll see what we can do about that. Yes, folks. So thank you very much. We still have 178 people on. And this is your opportunity now to, and I hope you can remember, and I hope you've taken note. If you have any questions to ask, ranging from Mrs. Snow's presentation right down to Mrs. Noel Dibik, to ask any questions or to seek any clarification you may have on any issue that caught your attention, perhaps more than the others. So, and please use the chat. You can raise your hand. We have persons who are monitoring.
Madam Moderator, we had one question.
I'm sorry? Yes.
Madam Moderator, we had one question a long time ago. What is the EAGLE program?
This is to whom?
From Pearl O.
To whom?
She asks, what is the EAGLE program?
I think that came...
Well, I guess it should be to Kathleen.
Yes, yes. It was what I mentioned, one of the programs, I believe, in Ethiopia. And the EAGLE program is a program about church and community mobilization. And a lot of the tools that they use are similar to the Maloa project that we participated in as a Global Mothers Union, where people go into the community, they meet with the individuals, they work with them to ascertain what their needs are, they empower them and enable them so that then the people go out and work to resolve those problems. So it's about mobilizing the communities depending on what their needs are. Quite often it's biblically based, and many of the tools which we used in the Maloa through story and role playing and conversation, it's a facilitated process. They have a similar one in Guyana, which I believe Lena Edmondson has been active in as well. But it's all about mobilizing the church and the community.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Snow. Do you have another question on? Okay, so while we are waiting, I wanted to ask Mrs. Snow as well about the development team that you mentioned. Yes. And how can their services be accessed, and in what areas of they can be?
They have sort of different members of the development team cover different areas. And I think I might have mentioned Jeanette Lawrence sort of covers our zone. So she is a link. And if people either come through me or through Jeanette, Jeanette is currently working, both Jeanette and Allison are working with Lena Edmondson and I in a steering group to develop a new curriculum for the parenting program. Most of the work that people I've worked with, it's really Jeanette and Abby and Allison as well. So members could certainly contact me and I could redirect them based on what their needs were. But they are most accessible. Naomi Herbert works mostly with the African provinces. And Allison, as I mentioned earlier, works primarily with the UK.
Okay, thank you very much. That will certainly put us in good stead. Any other questions, Valerie or Marsha? Anyone? Is it that for the questions?
Currently, everybody got what they wanted.
I have a question for Mrs. Price. She spoke about some of the programs. Mrs. Price, you spoke about some of the programs that you are currently engaged in Jamaica. Well, I guess you spoke mainly of Jamaica, or was it the province on the whole?
Well, Jamaica and some of the islands in the province.
Okay. Tell me something about the measurement of the effectiveness of the programs as we compare one year to another. Are you collecting the kind of data that would say to you whether or not the effect has been increasing, remaining the same, decreasing, less people are interested in the programs and so on? Do you collect that kind of data?
I would not say that we have officially, but we do, based on our reports. When you have your meetings and people report back to you, then you can see whether what you are doing is successful and it is helping. For example, we have this, I'm moving away from the prisoners now, but I'm thinking of like the young girls who are in school and getting pregnant. What happens is that we have a project where
message for and Stephen.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, please. I think we can
heard somebody. Yes, where we have this Mothers Union member who she's a church army officer and also a nurse. And these young girls, when they have clinics, she would go to the clinics and talk to them so that at least you don't just talk to them, encourage them, and let them know the dangers of what will happen to them if they had more children. So you find that second pregnancies are not as often, based on data that we get, they were not as often as they used to be since we had that program. Because like girls listen and they are taking charge of themselves. Okay, with regard to the prisoners now, I find that it is hard to get data because of the protocol they have with regard to visiting the prisoners. because you cannot go all the while. And sometimes even if you go, you are so supervised that the prisoners are not able to talk to you as they would want to. So therefore, you're not really sure of how we are reaching them. But the fact is that when they see you, they are happy that somebody come to visit them. I don't know if that
Yes. Well, I mean, you said it in the first couple of sentences that data is not really being collected as yet.
No.
I would like to, thank you. To throw the same question at Mrs. Doyle Beak and ask her how important, in terms of the success of these programs going forward, how important is it to ensure that you can measure, do a kind of before and after, and to determine the effectiveness of the programs?
Would you like me to answer, or?
No, yes.
Well, Margaret, it is. It's very, very important. And this is why it's important to understand, really dig down what is the problem and what is the solution. So that when you determine what efforts you are making, you have to think through what is the change you're hoping to see, hoping to get in different steps. What is the change that this particular effort or activity will bring about? So you get what we call an indicator, and you measure over time. That is important. But remember too, that the measurement may not always be in numbers. The measurement might be in quality. You have different kinds of indicators. So what Mrs. Price is saying is also quite valid, but it's really to ensure that from the beginning, when you're launching this project initiative, that you have an idea of the change you want to see over time, so that you could also make changes along the way if things are not, panning out as you think they should.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I think the
moderator, we have one more question.
Go ahead, please.
We have one more question, Madam Moderator.
Go ahead, please.
How do the saving and credit program operate for the Mothers Union members? This came from Pearl or Rowley.
Okay, thank you.
How do the saving and credit program operate for the Mothers Union members?
And thank you for that, Valerie, and thank you for the member who asked the question. So what they do is they originally, depending on the diocese or even the area that is running the program, they put together initially a small amount of money, which has been actually donated initially. And then members are able to draw on that. As that woman I mentioned who started selling bananas, she drew on some of that money, but then gives a small percentage of it back, a small portion as a donation back into the fund, so that it continues to grow. But it's like a startup amount of funding that they give to families, predominantly women, but families who need to get started with some sort of a business or a livelihood. So it's initially done through a savings, and then they put money back into it as they are able to. They pay it back. So that's why it's named as savings and credit. So they put some money back into it, but they're given that startup money.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a question for Mrs. DeBeek.
Okay, sure.
There's another question, Madam Moderator.
That's fine. Please go ahead.
This comes from Suzanne Hossein. Cadogan. Gender justice of the Anglican Church. Share with this movement how and can the Mothers Union liaise with this organization?
Well, I am assuming. Sorry, go ahead. So can you read it again, or I should look for it?
That's it.
Yes. So she's wondering how the Mothers Union could share with an organization that is doing gender justice in the church? I hope that's the question. Suzanne? Well, if that's the question, well, as far as I know, there is no organization, no unit or anything that is set up. And I was very careful not to push the mothers or put the mothers union into the role to hold this as their role. That's why I said sometimes we have to go from the bottom up. You demonstrate with your evidence. So I think the work on gender justice within the Mothers Union will have to be discussed. You know, what is it we really want to do? What are we focusing on? What aspect of gender justice look at? And so on. And, you know, and then we have something to share. But so far, that's not that I know of, that there is a standing committee or anything, any particular place that is doing the gender justice work. Now, I dare say that the term has been around the church for quite a while.
Thank you, Mrs. DeBeek.
You're very welcome, Suzanne.
Madam IPP, any other questions? If not, I will be happy at this point to thank you for all the members for your participation, and not doing the vote of thanks, but just to turn you over to our chair, Mrs. Valerie West, to close the proceeding. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Margaret, our moderator. And now we'll have the vote of thanks done by Mrs. Ingrid Tennier, and she is the coordinator of the 100th anniversary celebrations. Of the overall celebration, she has been the mastermind and coordinator of all these events. So, Mrs. Tennier.
Thank you, Mrs. West. Good afternoon to each and everyone. The zonal trustee, Mrs. Kathleen Snow, our provincial president, Ms. Hermine Price, our diocesan president, Mrs. Bernice Felix, our honorary Mothers Union member, Ms. Denise DeBeek, as she's always involved in everything that we do. Worldwide visitors, our chaplain, other members of the clergy, regional chairpersons, and all our Mothers Union members. A pleasant good afternoon to each and every one. We have been told in everything that we say thanks. And this afternoon, we do have a lot to say thanks for. Mothers Union in a changing world. And we have seen how our world around us is changing. Let me start with our zonal trustee, Ms. Snow. Thank you for being here with us. And not only today, but I thank you for being a part of our service on Sunday last. And thank you for your presentation. They have always said that Mothers Union has the best kept secret. And Ms. Snow's presentation has opened our eyes to all of the activities that are being done within the Mothers Union family. She has informed us of so many things that are going on and the changes that are taking place within the Mothers Union group or the Mothers Union family. Thank you, Ms. Snow. Ms. Price, I want to say a special thanks to you again for joining us on the 13th at our service, and again for accepting the invitation this afternoon. You have given us a reminder of the aim and objectives of the Mothers Union, and you remind us how important prayer is in all that we do. Especially when we see all the challenges that mothers especially face in these trying times. To our president, Ms. Bernice Felix, our new president, that is, we want to thank you for the task ahead, and we know that you will chart us through all the rough times that we would face ahead of us. And we know that you are resilient and you are going to make a change as is needed. Now, they always say we leave the best for last. And what a thought-provoking presentation by Ms. DeBee. I must say I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. You gave us a history of what women went through over the years and some of the problems of inequality and how the church can offer the support and the care for women. As you said, a light and a refuge. I must say thanks to Mrs. West, our immediate past president, who made this webinar possible. She is a person, when she has a task, she goes all out. And we see that we have visitors from all over the world with us this afternoon. And this is one of the changes that we are seeing in our society today. Because of COVID, which we even have to say thanks that COVID has stepped in, because before COVID, a situation like this would not have been possible. So we continue to say thanks to Mrs. West for her hard and tireless work, and to all Mothers Union members who have supported the initiatives over the past week. I must say thank you. We had a very good finishing for the week, and we continue to forge ahead. It is not the end of our celebration. It is the end of a celebration of 1 week, but we continue for the entire year. And I must continue to thank all the members who, especially the persons who helped with the services during the week. And I would call on you once more, and I know that you would continue to give us the support. I continue to say thanks to each and every one. And as we go forth, I hope that we don't forget all the things that Mothers Union has done and would continue to do in the future. Thanks again to each and every one for making this week a most enjoyable week.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Tanya. And before we go to our closing prayer, I would like to take this opportunity to just mention 2 announcements. One, we would like to share with our sisters in St. Lucia. I see quite a few of them on, including Andrew. And they are celebrating 64 years on the 21st of June. So let us tell them congratulations, all the best, all God's richest blessings for many more years of hard, faithful, and successful work in God's vineyard. So let's give them a little congratulations and a little clap hand. And also, it will be remiss of me, as Mrs. Tanya, yes, Mrs. Tanya did thank me, but there's one special lady who really did assist me with this webinar, very much so, from beginning to end. And tomorrow is her birthday. So I would like to wish Mrs. Wendy O'Brien, Wendy, let's see your face. Wendy O'Brien, a happy, happy birthday. May you have many more happy, healthy, blessed years. Wendy, happy birthday. I'm not hearing any wishes.
Can we see Wendy?
Wendy, would you like to say, let's see you. Yes, can we see Wendy? She has been a real great support to me in this. Wendy? Yeah, are you still there? Well, apparently Wendy is shy, which she always is. She's always likes to be. Are you there, Wendy? All right, be that as it may. So now we come. So now we come to the blessing and closing prayer. And this is going to be done by the Reverend
Valerie?
No, not yet. No, we haven't.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
right.
Yes, I'm seeing. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Wendy.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
We will take the cake and ice cream.
So
Okay,
we go on to say, yes, the blessings and closing prayer by the Reverend Beverly Hoyt, our Diocesan Mothers Union chaplain. Reverend Hoyt.
I'm here. Good afternoon again. In a moment of silence as we focus our thoughts to come before God. God is good, and He has been very good. Almighty Father, thank you for being with us this evening. We know that what transpired in this webinar is something meaningful and significant. And as we conclude this activity, may what we learn serve as a catalyst to move us forward and cause us to advance and see growth in every aspect of our lives. So as an organization, worldwide, provincial, diocesan, we can make a greater impact in this changing world. And so may the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen. To have an enjoyable evening and a blessed one.
Thank you, and the same to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Same to you, Reverend.
Thank you.
Thank you, and bye, everybody. Bye. Good night.
Bye, Lena, and thank you
Bye.
again.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye,
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
everyone.
Bye, Anne. Bye,
Bye.
please.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.